What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Film Jump with Jesse and Chris. Chris, we just got out of seeing Godzilla Kong, The New Empire in IMAX. Tell me about it.
Yeah, good time. Definitely a very sort of live action anime with a synthwave soundtrack. And I mean, that sounds like a wild concept, but it is a wild movie, but it's a hell of a good time at the theater.
Yeah, so not going to really get into the story about it. It's pretty obvious. It's Godzilla and King Kong again. And they have to fight more bad titans. And they team up this time. Yep. You know, but it's like the buddy cop thing where they kind of butt heads a little bit. And we'll get into that. But initial reactions out of the theater, I had such a good time. I think my first thought is this probably is the most fun.
Oh, yeah.
The most fun
it's just
Monsterverse entry.
Yeah.
You know?
If you were anywhere from like 10 to like 18 years old, I think this would just become one of your new favorite movies of all time immediately. But even as an adult, I'm like, the little kid in me, like, you can't help but smile at this movie and just have a lot of fun with it. You know, there's a time and a place for very serious, highbrow cinema, and we get movies like Godzilla -1, but there's also a time and a place for just a really entertaining, action-packed spectacle, thrill ride roller coaster of a blockbuster movie, and that's what this is, and it delivers in spades.
From the opening till the very end, there's action.
It's pretty nonstop.
Titan versus Titan action. There's like at least 8 like action sequences peppered throughout the whole thing.
Large and small encounters. You know, a movie like Van Helsing came out when I was about 12 years old, and I remember coming out of that movie and just thinking like, man, the action just started in that movie and then never stopped. It's like such a great movie. It's like, this is that for the new generation. This is the modern equivalent of that.
You know, I gotta say, if that sounds like a bad thing to you, then this movie's not for you. But we say this all the time, and I'm gonna keep saying it forever because it's true until I see the discourse end, which I never will. There's a different flavor of Godzilla movie for everybody, and this is very much that Showa, that Neo Showa era movie, where sure, some of it might be silly and fun, but I think I'd just say it's fun.
This film, it's speaking its own language. It's sort of creating its own genre. It's playing by its own rules. Film is a banquet. You know, there's gourmet meals, there's dessert, there's fast food, and there's bad and good versions of all of it. You know, a serious film can be pretentious and boring, and a serious film can be epic and highbrow. Fast food can be dumb and ridiculous and you just never want to watch it again, but it can also be this wild adrenaline rush, entertaining feast of spectacle. And so Godzilla is one of the most versatile franchises and characters out there. 70 years, all shapes and sizes, everything in between. A world where Godzilla -1 exists, and then 4 or 5 months later you can get Godzilla Kong, The New Empire, operating on both ends of that spectrum. That's the world I like living in.
You know, when we go to the movies, we can basically tell, like, this movie is going to be for us or not. And this movie absolutely is for us. Well, I mean, we're diehard Godzilla fans, so we're inclined to love it. We're the target audience for it. Having said that, I could see maybe some problems that people would have, like, oh, well, characters this, not enough time with that. It might feel a little rushed here and there, but that's what it is, though. I mean,
it's not a movie designed for the critics to love, but, you know, plenty of great movies aren't loved by the critics. You know, this doesn't marinate in a complex screenplay with deep human characters. Like, the Titans are the characters here. Mm-hmm. Kong is undoubtedly the lead of the film, and he doesn't have a single line of dialogue, but he has an emotional story arc and is the core of the film, the star of the film, maybe has the most screen time of any character in the film, and it's very much his journey. Godzilla's a very prominent role, but it's a two-hander, and Kong is the first hand, you know. Again, it's playing by its own rules, you know. If you think that films can only be a certain kind of a way, or that you're just like dead set of like, well, if it's not G14 or it's not -1, then what are we even doing here? Well, then, yeah, congratulations. This movie and many other Godzilla movies are not your cup of tea and they're not for you, but there's nothing wrong with it, appreciating all of the styles.
Yeah, what I really like about this one is that there's so many sequences of, like you said, like zero dialogue, and it reminded me of almost like a live action cartoon, and I say that as a good thing. Like, you get these sequences in some cartoons and animations, I should say.
Yeah, it's like a live action anime.
Yeah, where, you know, it's dialogue free, like How to Train Your Dragon, where he's just basically with the dragon,
or
and
something
toothless,
like,
you know,
or something like Primal, or sequences of I Am Legend, you know. certain parts of maybe A Quiet Place. Just visual storytelling, no dialogue, and you're just in a kind of pure cinema kind of a way. No spoken dialogue. You've got the music, and you've got the visuals, and you've got the facial expressions and the camera movements, and that's how you're taking in the story. And in some ways, that's a pretty highbrow way of making a movie and telling a story. So, I mean, to say that it lacks artistry or that it's just superficial or big, dumb fun, it's like, it's really not doing the film the credit it is. This isn't some Madam Web. This isn't some, whatever Transformers Rise of the nonsense. Like, this isn't anything like that. Not that this is highbrow. This isn't Inception or anything, but there's effort put in here for sure.
Yeah, I think Denis Villeneuve just said not too long ago in an interview that, dialogue is like not so great, and why have cinema? Why have a movie if it's all dialogue?
Yeah, he said when I come out of a movie, I'm not remembering the dialogue, I'm remembering the imagery. That's not necessarily true. Plenty of dialogue is memorable and epic as well, but there's a lot of there's not one set of rules on what makes a great movie or a bad movie, especially when you're talking about blockbusters, giant monsters, sci-fi, fantasy, spectacle. This movie marinates in what it is, and it does it very well.
Adam Wingard said in an interview that they even wrote dialogue for some of the Titans that, they don't speak it. There's no subtitles. Yeah, there's no subtitles.
And a lesser film might have done that, and it kind of would have crossed the line of feeling a little corny. It would have
jumped the shark.
Yeah, if it would have felt a little corny, a little too much, or have someone translating on the side. Godzilla movies have done that, and in the 60s that can kind of work, but it would have been a little bit of a bridge too far. So there's restraint in what they're doing here in some places, and it works really well.
I want to talk about the positives, because the negatives in a movie like this, they don't really matter.
This is a lean, mean monster movie. Sure, The weak spots, it's not the most complex script. It's not got the most complex and morally complex or developed characters. It's pretty straightforward point and shoot in terms of the human plot line. Mm-hmm. Sure, that's fine, but it's a monster movie, and it delivers monster action in spades, spectacle in spades, action, visuals, effects, creature design, world building. Delivers all of that in spades.
I love that we get more of the Hollow Earth. It's so cool to me.
I would say most of the movie is set in the Hollow Earth.
Yeah, it really is. Although, talking about the human characters, I love Dan Stevens.
Yeah,
he plays Trapper. Yeah, he was like a vet/dentist.
Yeah, kind of steals the show. Very sort of not taking any of it too seriously, and brings that kind of the proper tone to it. You have the characters that are carrying the dramatic side of the story, and he's having a good time. Like, he knows what movie he's in. Him and Brian Tyree Henry as Bernie, they know exactly what kind of movie they're in. Not every joke lands, not everything's a home run, but it keeps a great tone and lets you know the kind of ride you're in store for.
Yeah, I like Bernie's character a little bit more in this one than in Godzilla vs. Kong. I felt he was a little bit less, I don't want to say annoying, but he was a little more palatable in this movie.
They kind of pick and choose where to have him drop his kind of humorous anecdotes in this one a little bit better. It was kind of every single scene, every single second in the first movie. And again, after a first viewing, it feels like it wasn't as excessive in this one, but it still really worked. The
plot for the human characters and the driving force while they're going down to Hollow Earth felt a little bit more natural this time around than GVK. Whereas, the whole energy source thing, some of that felt a little, I don't want to say contrived, but this one, it just worked better.
Much more straightforward. Yeah. Just streamlined, it's a lean, mean monster machine kind of a movie.
You can tell that they weren't trying to course correct from box office problems from King of the Monsters like GVK did.
Yeah, they were just leaning into what worked about that movie and just trying to do more of it. And it definitely is that. All of where they started to push things in GVK, which is make the monsters more of the star characters, streamline the human plot line, make it more functional, not as large of an ensemble cast like some of these films have had before. Just streamlined it, lean it out, and it gets to be that, and it works really, really well.
Yeah, it's cool. The VFX are good. I think they're in line pretty well with GVK. The big man himself, Godzilla, is awesome.
Yeah.
He gets to be more, I feel like, fierce in this movie. More just like...
Yeah, definitely has that alpha energy.
Oh, yeah.
People will say, without a doubt, Kong has much more screen time. It's much more, Kong is the header and Godzilla's sort of the co-headliner. But they did a great thing with this film of you're never going that long before they They bring Godzilla back in. You're always keeping up with Godzilla's storyline, and there's not a wasted second of Godzilla's screen time in this movie. He's on screen and he's knocking heads, he's cleaning clocks.
Dude,
he's making stuff happen.
The first 3 minutes of the movie, you're getting a Titan battle with Godzilla.
Yeah, you get your sort of cold open with Kong, and then you get the opening title sequence and Godzilla's wrecking shop already. So very well handled.
Yeah, very, very good. As far as like, do I like this one better than Godzilla versus Kong? I don't know. I'd have to watch it again. I think I'm going to stick with my guns and say I think this is the most fun. And that's a very subjective thing.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of the more minute for minute, the more entertaining movie. Minute for minute, probably the more action-packed movie. More monster violence, more monsters in general. Let's
talk about that real quick.
Yeah.
This movie is so metal with the creature violence
and gore.
If the blood wasn't yellow and or green, this would be extremely R-rated.
Yeah. And they don't shy away from that. And that's kind of, when I was a kid, I loved the old 70s Godzilla movies where Godzilla would get cut and splurt blood, like that's just like monster action and violence is easy access and it's harmless. And this is bringing back that energy and it's just a joy to see, this will bring out your inner childhood Godzilla fan. Yeah, I think in terms of minute for minute entertainment value, it's hard not to say that it doesn't surpass GVK. GVK is kind of a bigger deal because that was a long-anticipated reboot remake. I'd wanted
it's like a Batman versus Superman.
I'd wanted it since my childhood, and it kind of has a definitive winner, and that was a very big deal for me, being a lifelong Godzilla fan. I wanted to kind of see Godzilla win, so it's got this higher kind of stakes attached to it. This is kind of different. It's more of just a good monsters, bad monsters kind of a story. So it's a different thing. But in terms of, dollar for dollar, minute for minute, like it's hard not to say that this isn't a more action-packed, more fast-paced, more wild adventure kind of a film.
The new Titans are great. One in particular, I think, is from one of the comic books. It's a nice little tie-in. It's really good. There's a lot of Titan action in this. The Scar King, Shimo, Suko, all the new additions are great in their own manner. They might be a little undercooked in some regard, but when you have this many Titans and they're all fighting each other, it kind of is just like...
And the debate is always going to be, do you want one or two or three really, really long fights, or do you want to have sort of a volume and the kind of variety and the number of encounters you get? And that's a debate that you can have, but it's like, I like seeing some smaller encounters where Godzilla or Kong get to just completely decimate their enemy within about a minute and just kind of like show that, like, yes, they are the apex, they are the alphas, and some of these Titans can't even stand a chance against them. So that way, when they get a challenge and they're up against the ropes, it has a little bit more meaning and value.
Yeah, this one is super fun. It is like a live action anime through and through,
and
80s
and a synth wave soundtrack.
Oh, it's so good. The needle drops in this one, I think, work a little bit better.
Yeah, there's some fun ones. Yeah. Some of them were not songs that I immediately knew, but again, that mileage will vary. Some of them are songs you'll recognize, but it didn't feel overdone, and they drop them in a lot of fun places, and it's a good time.
I think there's only like 3 of them.
Yeah, 3 or 4.
Like actually like. So overall, if I had to give this a rating, as a Godzilla fan, I would give it like a 9.5, 10 out of 10. Just because it's bonkers, it's a roller coaster action ride of a movie. Yeah. This is what you want from a modern Showa era film. So if you're in that boat, you're gonna absolutely dig this. Subjectively, if you're the kind of person who's like, I want more -1 or more whatever, you're probably gonna give this like a 6 or a 7. It's just...
if you've got a hard line, sort of crystallized view of what you think movies need to be or should be. If you're like, well, I like Godzilla -1, and outside of that, I don't really like these stupid movies. Well, okay, this isn't for you. This is a middle of the road movie. Then you might not dig it. But if you can kind of meet the movie on its own terms and sort of respect the mission statement that the movie's operating on, I live in a world where I can call Dune Part 2 a 10 out of 10 for what it is, and I can call a movie like this a 9 or a 9.5 or a 10 out of 10 for what it is. Wildly different movies. Maybe plenty of people can only like one or the other, but I'm kind of one of those that it's like, I can enjoy my awesome, spectacular monster adventure movie, and I can enjoy my sort of complex, deep sci-fi film. It's a great experience, relentlessly entertaining.
Yeah, very rewatchable, just because of the pacing of all the fights and whatnot. So, yeah, I mean, we just wanted to give you our first review, our out-of-theater reaction, so to speak.
Yeah, if you've got kids, they'll love it automatically.
Oh, yeah.
This is definitely a movie. I don't want to say fun for the whole family, but this is definitely like dads, sons, older brothers, younger brothers. Like, this is that sort of awesome, epic, fun, good time at the movies that you want.
Yeah, this is the movie I wanted when I was a kid. And, like, what the old Godzilla movies were to me
Exactly.
as a kid, you know, and I can't wait to take my older kids to see this one.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's going to be it. We give it a big thumbs up, big recommend.
Absolutely.
We absolutely loved it.
What's the great headline they like to say? See it loud and with a crowd.
Yeah, loud in the crowd. Biggest screen possible. So, all right, everyone. Well, thanks for stopping by.
Have a good one.
Welcome to my